My newest novel, Courtroom Drama, just came out, so I'm here as part of the release for that. So thank you for joining me as part of this tour. This is my third rom-com novel, and Courtroom Drama is, I guess I'll just launch into the description.
Yeah, do it.
It's about Sydney, who is chosen for a sequestered jury for a high-profile romance trial, high-profile murder trial. And it's been a long tour, you guys. And it's a reality star who is on trial for murdering her husband, and she is excited to be on the jury because she has watched the show. She knows of the defendant until she finds out that her estranged high school childhood best friend, is on the jury with her. And she hasn't spoken to him in 10 years, and so now they are sort of forced to have to address the reasons for why they have not spoken in 10 years in a sequestered jury setting. So it's part romance, part jury and mystery, and it's been fun to see people say I came for the romance but stayed for the trial and to see what happened with the trial. So
I love it. I think when you originally pitched this book to me, you were like, it's Legally Blonde meets Jury Duty meets The Real Housewives. Yes. And I was like, thank you for taking all of my special interests into consideration when you were writing this book.
Technically didn't use Jury Duty as a comp because I didn't feel like a lot of... has anyone seen the show Jury Duty? Okay. It felt like people didn't know the comp very well. I still don't understand how people haven't watched that show because it's so good. But that's a fun comp too.
And you got a blurb from Ronald.
We did. So Ronald, the one guy on the show who didn't know that it was a fake show, he blurbed the book, which was fun. Which is
truly, like, I would just retire because
he was so cute. He was like, can I get copies for my mom and my girl? Like, he is, and his girlfriend, he requested copies for them. He's like just as lovely as he was on the show, which is nice.
That's so nice. Yeah. Okay. So how did you come up with
You need to introduce yourself.
Oh yeah, I'm Falon, Ballard. She's more important than me today. Okay, how did you come up with this concept and this idea?
Well, clearly we're fans of reality TV. We wore matching Bravo shirts today. But the reality part came easy because I'm a fan and I thought it would be really fun to think about like a high profile kind of salacious trial. I watched the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial and the Karen Reed trial, which I've gotten caught up on.
Okay, good.
And so I'm always just fascinated by high profile cases like that. So that was really fun to explore. I'm also a reality fan, as you just said. So the show in the book is Authentic Moms of Malibu, but it's based on Real Housewives. And so there's a lot of Easter eggs in it for Real Housewives or reality fans, so that you might pick up on too if you're a fan of those things. But it was really just the things that I enjoy.
I love okay, so I am a huge listener of the podcast Bitch Sesh, which if you're not already listening, please check out that immediately. I can't remember who, one of the guests on their show was like, the Bravo universe is like melding with like the true crime universe with like all of the criminals that are now on Bravo shows. And I was like, that's kind of what this is like the perfect melding of the true crime love and the Real Housewives love.
So Margot, the character who's on trial, I feel like she could be many of the real housewives that are currently on the show. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. Okay, I would love to hear a little bit about your writing process and kind of just like what the standard writing day looks like for you, but also now that this is your third book, like has your process changed at all? Have you learned anything about yourself and your process at this point?
Yeah, I think 3 books in, every book you start to learn more about yourself as a writer and kind of what your style is, what works for you. And I think that's the most important thing because what works for other people may not work for you. I've talked about my writing process and some people cringe because they could never do it that way. And so I think it's really about finding what works for you. I'm a pantser, which means I don't outline. Are you as well?
It's the only way to be.
Yeah, I don't outline. I fly by the seat of my pants. I sit down and kind of am excited to write because I'm excited to find out how it's going to unfold and what's going to happen. I think more often than not, that's what I hear people gravitate towards. I am not afraid to write out of order, and I most often do. I will write scenes, usually beginning and the end first, and they'll change, right, as the story unfolds, but I will just kind of go to the advice that I really love is write the islands, like go write a big scene that's interesting and exciting to you, and then go back and fill in the connective tissue if you Wantanitu, you look a little itchy from that part.
Yeah, I can't do that.
Yeah.
But
it's
I love
also
that for
what
you.
keeps me from, like, I don't get writer's block. I don't ever feel like I sit down and don't know what to do because I just go to whatever is interesting. So it's a nice kind of way to trick your brain to keep going.
See, if I did that, I would only write sex scenes, and then if I had to go back and fill in everything else, I'd be like, well, this is boring and I don't want to write it. And then I would
Okay, fair.
So I make myself write in order, but I like that. But I think that's cool too, that you sort of you embrace the process, I think, by the time you get to this point.
Yeah, I think it's just knowing, like I said, knowing yourself and knowing what works for you.
Yeah, that's very cool. All right. Have you ever been on a jury before?
No. I would have loved to have been, maybe before kids, because now it would feel like a hassle, but I would have loved to have been on a case like this, like a high profile, maybe not sequestered, but like a high profile case that has a lot of salacious witnesses, and like a couple of her cast members are on the jury, or witnesses as part of the trial as well. So I think that would have been so fun to be a part of.
I mean, I kind of feel like once you have kids, a sequestered jury is the dream, right? You just go sit in a hotel room by yourself.
Okay, good point. Yes.
Okay, so what did the research process look like for figuring out some of those jury details?
Yeah, I don't have any court experience. Liberties were taken. So anyone who reads, is anyone in the legal field at all? Okay. Liberties were taken. It is fiction, but no, that was the part that I had to research most. And a lot of, there aren't sequestered juries very often anymore. It's a very expensive thing to do for a criminal trial. And so it doesn't happen very often at all. So the justification for that was a piece of that. And then it's all the little things that happen in terms of like a courtroom, because I've never been part of a criminal trial. So the order of the witnesses and what would make the most sense, and who the DA would potentially call versus who the defense would potentially call, but still in a way that would be serving of the story, was challenging. And I did change the order of things and whatnot a bit. And even things as simple as, what order does the jury sit in, which we know they sit in order, but is one over here or is one over here? And what's the back, right? So it's, you go down these rabbit holes of research for one line, and that ends up something that ends up being one line in the book.
Yes. And then you spend your whole day Googling.
Yeah,
we've all been there. Okay, so now that you've written this book, I mean, obviously you don't always have a choice, but would you want to be part of a trial in the future?
I think I would.
I think it'd be
I don't think anyone would ask me now, but
yeah. Well,
I feel like this is a disqualifier to be on a trial now, but
I mean, I feel like these days, especially with like a high profile one like this, I guess maybe like a reality TV is a little bit more niche, but like anytime there is a celebrity trial, I'm like, are there people on this planet who don't know? Like,
and that was one of the things, the liberties, I guess, was, would she have actually gotten on the case knowing that she was a fan of the show and has watched the show? But this is a figure who is well known, the defendant. And so was there anyone potentially that would, that wasn't already going to know of her, at least in some capacity? Probably not.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's time to talk our favorite topic. Okay. I guess we should like really take a poll here. Are we Real Housewives Bravo fans in the room?
We've got one.
Okay.
Thank you. This conversation is really just for you.
I just appreciate your shirt.
Thank you. Do you understand the reference? Okay, yay.
Yeah.
I was like, no one's gonna, it's so specific, no one's gonna understand it. Thank you.
Amazing.
What is it?
It's a Vanderpump Rules reference.
Okay.
Mine is Dorit from the Real Housewives of
Oh, I know
Beverly
that
Hills.
one.
Yes, which I was walking around in this area earlier today, and I was like, what if she like saw me in this shirt? Like that'd be the most mortifying thing that ever happened to me. But then I was like, she's not on the West Side, so it's fine.
The bellhop asked me what my shirt meant, and I was like, how deep am I going to go right now in explaining this? Yeah.
I'm surprised he didn't know what it was. But that's okay. All right. Well, we are going to talk some reality TV because Neely and I are both very big fans, but also this is like such an important part of the book. So I think maybe the biggest thing happening in reality TV at the moment is Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Are you caught up? What are your thoughts? What are your feelings? Are you going to go get extensions?
I'm not watching.
Okay.
And only because I live in a like highly populated area, Mormon area, and I don't need it on both. Like I don't need it on my TV. I have it in real life.
That's fair. You should watch.
I heard it's great though. Like, are you watching the?
No,
That's
I
not-
tried, but like Bravo's really my like heart.
Yes,
So
I feel that.
tried.
Yeah.
I do think this season is better than the first season. So there is a little bit of that. I do also think that of the non-Bravo reality shows, it's the one that feels the most Bravo. Like they definitely.
I've heard that too.
Yeah. But okay. All right, that's all right. All right, I sent you the questions, and one of the questions was like, what are your thoughts on the Karen Reed trial? And you're like, I'm not keeping up with it. And I was like,
Okay, is anyone following the Karen Reed trial? Okay, well, our one legal
No, I mean only just from
aficionado.
the news because the like David Muir reports on it.
Okay, so
Yes.
do you think she's guilty?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, who is
Really?
this? I have no
So there's a
clue
show.
what
What's
we're
the
talking
show
about.
called? Something Snow.
Yeah,
in
A Body
Snow.
in the Snow.
Body in the Snow. There's a documentary.
Do you think she's guilty?
So here's my answer to that, which I will
Shocked
tie
by
this
this.
back to the book, which is because so even in the book when they talk about they finally come together, you don't know what anyone thinks. You all sit in a courtroom for, in this case, 3 weeks, hear all of the same testimony, all of the same information, and you go into a room and everyone interpreted it differently, right? Like there's no consensus and it's everyone's biases and predetermined whatever they knew about this woman coming together into the deliberation room. And I think there's a line specifically where she says, is the most salacious thing true? And because of like our day and age with social media and like how many things we are exposed to and how much everything to us is oftentimes now reduced to entertainment value, I think it's easy to choose that the most salacious thing is true or like want the most salacious thing to be true.
Well, I think she was just drunk and backed into him by accident, and then
Okay, that's
she killed him. And now what? So just deny the whole thing because she's gonna go to jail for that, right? So
And then
that's
just
what I think.
drove away.
Because her story is ridiculous. Like his police friends killed him. That doesn't make sense.
I think it makes sense.
Oh, we're on opposing sides.
However, I will say, obviously,
Well,
I
don't
am
know
not
the
in the legal
details. So if
field.
you know the
so
details. I only watch a few minutes.
I am watching the court of TikTok as they are giving us the highlights from the trial every day.
There you
But
go.
if you haven't paid attention to Karen Reed, basically her boyfriend was a Boston police officer. That's a fun sound. And he was discovered in the snow outside of his friend's house.
In a blizzard.
Yeah,
right?
in a blizzard. He's a cop. Everybody in the house was a cop. So, lots of conspiracy theories.
It's like who actually, how did he get there? Who actually killed
Yeah.
him?
And her first trial ended in a mistrial, and so she's now in the process of being retried. So it's a lot. Go down the TikTok rabbit hole. It'll keep you up all night. Okay.
If you like true crime, it's a
yes,
good
for sure. All right. So, what is your current favorite Bravo show?
one. Oh, I like Beverly Hills Housewives. I think Dorit had a moment this season.
She did.
Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
the big one. What's yours?
I mean, in terms of the Real Housewives franchises, I'm definitely Salt Lake City is like reigning supreme for me these days. But I'm also very excited about Miami coming back. And I am enjoying Atlanta this season. I love Portia.
Portia's fantastic.
I think Portia is one of the funniest human beings on the
Did
planet.
anyone watch Traitors? Okay, thank you.
Seen.
Traitors is so good. And
Traitors is
she was
fantastic.
the star of season 2.
Yeah. So we're having some good Housewives moments. I also am a big Summer House fan.
Okay, I didn't watch a ton of Summer House.
Okay.
We got nods over here.
Yes, Summer House. Paige is.
I do love Paige.
Truly one of the greatest humans on the planet. Never met her, never will, but I feel like I can say that. And I am cautiously interested in the new Vanderpump Rules.
Yeah, we were talking about that already today.
Don't know how we
The
feel about that.
reboot.
Yes, but we'll see what
Reboots.
happens.
All right, we won't bore you with reality TV. So
Yeah.
Everyone's like, we don't know what you're talking about.
But we do still have a few more questions because we just have to talk about it. Okay, so hypothetically, allegedly, of the housewives in the universe, which of them do you feel like might be capable of taking someone's life at some point in time? Allegedly, hypothetically.
Allegedly.
Yes.
I feel like Teresa could be Margot. Teresa from New
100%.
Jersey.
That tracks.
I feel like Dorit, given everything her and PK are going through, she would make a very interesting, they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. There's a lot of housewives that I feel like could end up on trial, and some of them have in different capacities.
Yes. Yeah. Again, the housewives in true crime worlds have really melded together now that we have multiple that have been in jail. Okay. Do have one more housewives question, and then we'll do something different after this. All right. So if you could pick any 6 housewives to do like an all-star season, from past, present, anybody, who would be your 6?
It has to be Kyle from Beverly Hills.
Okay.
And Phaedra
Yes. Love it.
from Atlanta.
You
Okay.
gotta have somebody from original New York.
Bethany.
Okay.
Okay, you pick the other 3.
Okay. I'm gonna go with, let's go with Lisa Barlow from Salt Lake City. I feel like she's a classic. I feel like also too, if you're gonna have Kyle, you should go Lisa Vanderpump. I feel like that might be a good little dynamic there. And then I think we need someone from OC, but I don't know. Would be a good one. From OC.
Vicky.
Vicky.
She's a little crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. We'll accept that. Okay.
Okay, book stuff now.
All right, we'll go back to books. Okay, so I would love to hear just like what a typical like writing day in your life looks like.
Well, I have 2 elementary age children, so usually it's when they're at school, like get them ready, drop them off right in the morning when you still have a brain that works and have creative, more creativity. I don't know how people write at night, at the end of the day. My brain is fried at that point, so it's a lot easier to do that, in the morning. I do still kind of technically have a day job, which is consulting. I do HR consulting, and so a lot of that is more doesn't require as much brain power because it's a little easier. So I'll do some of that later on during the day.
Okay, that makes sense. Do you have a favorite part of the writing process?
I think this is an unpopular opinion amongst authors, but I really love the drafting phase.
Me too.
Okay, a lot of authors dread the first, like getting the story out for the first time because it's the sometimes it's the hardest. I think that's the most exciting, just sitting down on the blank page and just seeing where it goes and writing it. And then, that's always the most fun for me to see where the story is going to go.
Yeah, because that's when you really get to play.
Yeah.
Like that to me is the stage.
There are no
when
rules.
You're like the little kid with your dolls making up their little story about their lives. Like that is the fun part. What is the hardest part for you?
Hardest part, I would say, is if I have anything that I have to follow specifically. So like we were talking about like a next project, which is the first time that I would be writing more than one book, like a series. And so having to write a synopsis is the most difficult thing I can imagine as a pantser, because you have to basically write the whole plot of the book. And I don't know, because I haven't written the book yet because I'm a pantser. So having to sit down and think about like what actually happens in this entire storyline and write it in like a page is my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
I think that's always the hardest part. Even after the book is written, writing a synopsis is for some reason the hardest part. To try to narrow it all down to a 1-page summary is challenging.
Yeah, I would rather write 80,000 words
any
day than try to put it all into. I mean, and even then, when you have to boil it down further, and then it's like, okay, well, give us like the 1-sentence pitch, and you're like, no, that's
Trying
impossible.
to narrow it down is always hard.
Yeah.
Now AI can do it for you.
There we go.
There you go.
So you have the skill set. Actually, a lot of romance writers are also lawyers. That is a very
that is a very
dual
that
career.
is true.
Yeah, lots in the
Yeah.
legal field. Are you allowed, or can you share what you are working on in the future with us?
Yeah, well, I have 3 rom-coms. This is my third, and I've done 3 in 3 years, so it's been a very like in the rom-com space. And then I sat down to write another rom-com, and I just couldn't do it this time. Like state of the world, whatever you might want to contribute or attribute it to, and so I instead wrote a dystopian romance, and it's ideally will be a trilogy, so it's a shift for me, and we're going to be taking it out here next week, I think, hopefully. So yeah, the process is always moving along so quickly that usually as one book is coming out, you're already have the next one written and are kind of where is it in the process? It's somewhere kind of pivotal in the process. So yeah, I'm going to be coming out with something a little bit different.
I love that. What was like the biggest challenge in kind of shifting to a new genre?
Well, it's still technically
Or
romance,
subgenre.
and romance readers are great because they're very open across the kind of subgenres of like allowing authors to explore and write different things and write in different spaces. So it's not even being afraid of readership not following or not being interested in it. I think it's more just the shift in the writing of it. It's not funny the way a rom-com is, right? It's not necessarily hopeful or lighthearted. It's a very different type of book. So you kind of want people to still feel your writing style and maybe what they like about it, but then also being able to carry that over into a very different genre is a little challenging.
Yeah, sure. What have you been reading lately?
Oh, I think you probably feel the same way. A lot of what I read now is like advanced reader copies or books to blurb from other authors, which is really fun. There's a great debut coming out called The Dirty Version that I got to blurb. It's a rom-com. It's about an intimacy coordinator on a set for an adaptation. So the author, the romance is between the author of the book and the intimacy coordinator, who is directing the intimacy scenes for the film adaptation of her book.
Love it.
So that one's really fun, and it's very smart, and it's feminist, and it's just really great. And then another one that just came out, I think she had the same pub day as me, it's a book by Sarah Hamden, which is What Will People Think? And she's Middle Eastern, the main character, she's a comedian, and it's like very not in line with what her family thinks she should be doing, and it's funny, and there's like stand-up bits in it. It's really, really great.
Oh, okay. Yeah, those both sound amazing.
Both debuts too, which is fun.
Love that. We love a debut.
What are you reading?
So I am currently reading Along Came Amor by Alexis Daria, which I think comes out tomorrow, pretty soon.
Tomorrow is Tuesday.
It is Tuesday, yeah.
The day for books.
She has the most like stunningly beautiful covers.
Yeah,
They're
she does.
so eye-catching and so gorgeous. And then another arc that I read that I really loved was When Javi Done Tamari.
Oh, I
by
read that
Mia Sosa.
too. It's really good.
So good. Friends to Lovers does not always work for me trope-wise, but this one is like very, very
Her
well
books are
done.
very funny too.
Yeah,
She's a very funny author.
just very like sweet.
Like one-liners.
Yeah.
Galore.
Love her. Okay, so that kind of brought to mind another question, and then I think we'll get to questions from you guys in a second here. Do you have a favorite trope to read and a favorite trope to write?
I really enjoyed writing Second Chance in this one. I think Second Chance romance was really fun to explore. For a romance author, it can be challenging to develop that like kind of deep bond that readers can root for in the matter of 300 pages or whatever it is. And so it's almost a cheat to be able to give them backstory where they've known each other before, and you have all of this previous relationship, and they're not just meeting page 1 on the book. It helps really deepen the relationship and be able to give them, now they have 10 years of history versus just 350 pages of history. So it's a really fun thing to explore. I also really loved the idea of the exploration of timing, and like, if someone comes into your life at the wrong time, what that means and what that looks like. And, if you can come back together at a later point when maybe it is the right time and you're two different people, but you still have the same connections that you did. That was really, really fun to explore. So I love a good second chance. And I do love forced proximity, which is also in the book.
Yes.
Force you to face your
Yes.
issues.
I love a forced proximity. I feel like you just can't go wrong with that. Is there a trope that you really want to write that you haven't written yet?
I've written forced proximity. I've written like vacation romance. I've written one bed. I feel like I've covered a lot.
Yeah.
And like kind of traditional romance tropes. I haven't done a true enemies to lovers, which I think would be really fun to explore.
Yeah, Enemies to Lovers is, of course, like, I feel like everybody's go-to favorite. We love that one. I do feel like in contemporary, it can be difficult because why do they hate each other so much? When you get into something like dystopian or fantasy, then it makes it a little bit easier
The
because
stakes are a
the
lot higher.
world stakes are, so much higher. But I mean, when it's done right, it really just, it's every time.
Yeah, enemies to lovers is a fun one.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll come to you guys for questions.
Yeah.
So you said you wrote 3 books in 3 years, but how did each book work? I mean, was it much easier by the time you got to the 3rd one and it only took a few months, or how did it?
So I don't know about easier. So when you're writing your debut, you're just focused on the writing, which is nice, right? Because you don't have an agent yet. You don't have another book that is in a process somewhere. And to do a book a year, you usually, publishing the last 6 months roughly is all marketing and publicity. So the book has been done for 6 months typically by the time it comes out. So during that time, you're starting and stopping with something else. So for example, I was drafting this book when my last book in a not so perfect world was with developmental edit. My developmental editor she would have it for 3 weeks. I would do a big chunk of writing. I would get my developmental edits back. I would put this on hold. So it's never just like a clear starting and stopping all the way through. It's a lot of start and stop as you're working on other projects. So I don't know if it's gotten faster necessarily, but I do think I've gotten more efficient. So I was always someone who was an underwriter, meaning I would have a really thin draft, so maybe 40 or 50,000 words for a first draft, which for reference, the final book is somewhere between like 90 and 110.
How many pages is that?
Probably like
350?
Yeah,
something like that. So 300, 350. So a lot of it would start at like 50,000 and then grow from there through rounds of edits. And I've gotten now, my drafts are closer to that final number. So I think I've grown in terms of like getting there faster and not taking as many rounds of edits to get to like what would be considered a full draft. Yeah. But it's always a start and stop if you're putting out more than one book within a certain period of time because there's so much, and it's even it's like stopping to look at copy, what the copy is going to look like in the cover and doing approvals for that. And so there's always something else that you're touching during that time.
So I'm not a writer, but when you do your book, you do the full draft and you send it off. So now you're talking about just like polishing it out.
Yeah, so if it's under contract, which it typically will be, then you will write the draft, get it to kind of the point that you think you're comfortable sharing it, and then send it to your editor. They will read it, give you a developmental letter, which is usually 3 or 4 pages.
I try not to think about it.
Okay, usually like 3 or 4 pages of like, hey, here's plot holes, or here's some things that we want you to change or fix, or didn't make sense. And then you'll go back, make those edits, and you'll do maybe 2 rounds like that with your editor. And then once they kind of think it's final, then they'll take that to copy edits from there. And then you're spending a lot of time away from it. So that's really when advanced reader copies would start to be put out, et cetera. And that's really when they would consider the book done, even though it still needs to go through copy edits and things like that. So that's when you start to get a lot of your time back. And that's still roughly like 6 months before, like I said, the book is coming out. So you get kind of that 6-month period where you have a lot of time that you could be working on another project.
For reference, I'm doing copy edits right now on my book that comes out in March of 2026. So, and then once those are done, like I'm pretty much done with it. So.
Yeah, that's crazy. And even like for this dystopian, we're hoping to get it out here, in the next 2 weeks, let's say. If it sells quickly, then my goal would be that it would be a fall of 2026 book, but that would be a fairly quick timeline. So I will feel happy and lucky if it's a 2026 book and not a 2027 book.
And when you say editor, it's the editor that's connected with the publisher.
Correct. And sometimes your agent will give notes and whatnot too, but if it's already under contract, then you'll typically just send it straight to your editor.
So I just have one other thing
You're
about
fine.
novelize, but I have a friend who wrote a book, and apparently it's really hard to get a publisher. Like a lot of people are self-publishing, so you just like talk about finding an editor because
Yeah, so the first thing, I want to hear your story too, because I don't necessarily know what and everyone's is so different too when you start talking to authors. Like everyone has such a different experience. I had no connections to publishing whatsoever. I always knew I wanted to write a book, didn't necessarily ever know when I was going to do it. And then COVID hit, and like a lot of people, I found myself a lot of time, and I had an at-home kindergartner and an at-home toddler. Both my husband and I were working from home. It was miserable. So I would lock myself in the guest room at the end of the night and pretend I was at a resort, and I would write. And it really became my self-care time. And it was something to look forward to. And that was the first time I ever finished a book. And was really proud of myself. And I thought I'm off to the races and this is gonna be great. And that didn't happen that way. I hired a developmental editor who gave me a very scathing developmental edit back. And so I ended up putting that book in the drawer, which most authors have books that never have seen the light of day, that they've, written the entire book and it just never got published for one reason or another. And then I took what I learned from there and I started writing what would become Love Buzz, my debut. I queried agents and I had no connections in the publishing world. My book was in the slush pile, which is basically just thousands of books that agents get on a monthly basis. I was lucky enough to get some traction from that and get a couple of offers from agents. So I ended up signing with my agent, and then your agent then is the one that will help you go on submission, which is basically another querying process, but with editors this time, with publishing houses. But they help you navigate that part. Yeah. So you got to kind of sell it twice.
Yeah. And yeah, at least
twice.
Twice if you're lucky. Yeah. I queried like 2 full manuscripts before I wrote a completely separate manuscript that I ended up getting to do a mentorship program with called Pitch Wars, which doesn't exist any longer. But with that program, unagented writers got to work with published authors and kind of like get your manuscript into shape. And then there was a showcase at the end for agents where agents could request
Who
to
was
see
your
more.
mentor?
So I am the luckiest girl in the world. I had Alexa Martin and Suzanne Park as my mentors. They were both absolutely incredible. They whipped me into shape. And so I got my agent at the end of that showcase. And then that book went on submission to editors on like March 7th of 2020. So basically the worst timing in the entire world. The entire city of New York shut down like 2 days later. So that book ended up not selling, which happens pretty regularly. It is not uncommon to have your first book that goes out to editors not sell. But I wrote Lease on Love, which was my debut, while that book was out on submission and during the pandemic when we were all, miserable and hating life. And then that one sold in like 3 days. So you
never know from book to book either. Yeah.
Yep. And here we are.
Do you guys believe reality TV is true?
No. No. It's purely for entertainment. It's like, for me at least, it's a shut off your brain at the end of the night. Like, don't have to think and just be entertained.
Yeah.
What's so attractive about reality TV from, regular written fiction TV?
Well, I watch both.
Yeah.
I definitely enjoy and watch both. I think for me, it's a lot of like you don't have to think. And sometimes that's what you need or want or are looking for from an entertainment perspective. I go to books for thought. I don't go to TV or reality TV for thought. So it's a nice way to just like feel entertained and nothing else. And sometimes you need that.
Is it the competition?
I don't know. I do watch the competition ones too, which is fun.
But I do feel like
it's the personality and character more
real than
some of them. I think the competition ones are more real than like the housewife ones. Those ones are very contrived. But like Traders or Survivor or some of
But you like the Housewives one.
I do.
What about it? I'm very curious.
I do actually, I would say like the interpersonal relationships can be really interesting, and the dynamics between like friend groups and friendships and the way that they unfold. I think as an author, it actually is, and because we are truly just like observers of the world and of people and of mannerisms and interpersonal relationships, like we're always sort of observing and like taking those things in, and it's a really great way to observe interpersonal relationships amongst women in particular.
Yeah. And I do think that, if we look back 10, 15 years when these shows were starting, they were more
Real.
This is a snapshot of real life and these are real friends. I don't think that's where we are these days with a lot of the shows. But like we were talking earlier about the first season of Vanderpump Rules, which I think premiered in like 2013 or 14.
Yeah.
And it was a show in a restaurant with people who were friends. They had relationships with each other. They were actually dating. They had history together. They actually all worked in this restaurant together. And it was like a really fascinating look at how they communicated with one another, the things that, they would say and do to each other in these sort of like heightened circumstances. And we've gone away from that, I think, in recent years.
It has changed.
Are they on daily? Are they like soap operas?
Like once a week. Kind of like a network show.
So they're
most
like
of them.
regular fiction shows.
Although Love Island.
What?
Love Island is daily when it's on during the summer.
And it's almost
And that feels like a
live.
very voyeuristic one, because you literally are watching them on an island as things are happening on a daily basis in real time. So that one is much more of like a voyeuristic component to it. Yeah.
So I love that you got a blurb from the guy from Jury Duty.
Me too.
This is a question for both of you. Do you have any other like fun wish list people to blurb your book? Any fun stories about that?
I have a story. Well, Falon also blurbed this book, which was really fun. So it's fun to be able to reach out to. Now it's friends, right? When it was, you were asking about what's changed in 3 books. First book, it's like your agent and publisher who's reaching out to people on your behalf because you don't know anyone. And now it was really cool to be like, I asked my friends to blurb and I can say that, right? Which is a really nice development. This dystopian that's going out was a really fun package to put together. And so Allie Hazelwood blurbed it to be able to send out on sub, which was really exciting to be able to get. Nisha J. Tooley blurbed it as well. So it was really fun to be able to reach out to people and be like, will you, do this? And the author community is very, very supportive, especially the romance author community, I should say in particular, is really, really supportive. So dream blurbs, I feel like Allie was one, which I can say, now that I have, which is really cool. Check that off. Yeah. For dystopian, I have to think about like who those people would be, because that hasn't been my world for very long.
I mean, obviously to me, when I think dystopian, Suzanne Collins is the first person that comes to mind, but I don't think
That would
that's
be a dream
necessarily
one.
your audience.
It's YA, but I feel like everyone reads it anyway. So
Yeah.
she would be a great one. Yeah. Let's put that out in the universe.
Suzanne.
She would be great. I feel like she's very reclusive.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never seen a blurb of hers.
No, I don't think I have either.
I mean, Emily Henry would definitely be like top of my list for sure. But also like a really weird one. We were kind of talking about this earlier. So thank you for planting this seed of opportunity for me to tell the story. So Jordan Fisher, who is, a big Broadway guy, he has started doing these series of TikTok videos where he reads romantasy books and like talks about them like while he's on breaks during his show. And I have a Moulin Rouge inspired romantasy coming out in December, and he is currently in Moulin Rouge on Broadway. So yes, I will be traveling to New York to attempt to force it.
I love this so much.
So please stay tuned and see if it actually works.
I love that.
I just saw that show 2 days ago.
It's
in New
so
York.
good.
It was fantastic.
It's one of my favorites. I love it so much. So
So she's literally flying there tonight
yes.
with her book to try to get it to him so that he will,
Be like, Jordan.
yeah.
Can you find out well, okay, I guess he's not staying in.
Yeah, how far are we willing to
I
go?
know. I'm not
Be
going to go
careful.
full stalker.
Yeah.
A lot of people, I've been making some TikTok videos about it, and a lot of people are like, well, if you can't catch him at the stage door, you can like give it to the security guard or like somebody at the theater. And I'm like,
All right. Well, I'm rooting heavily for this.
The handoff is what is really essential, though. I feel like that is
Yeah.
the moment that I need the most in my life. So
Or you could just plant it in his dressing room with a big metal plate. I mean,
an arrow.
if you can't hand it off.
How do we get into the dressing
how do we do
room?
that?
No, just
Oh.
get somebody at the theater to put it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I thought you had an in for a minute.
I mean, $100 bills. Just saying.
That's, I mean, probably a slip some cash.
Do you create your own TikTok and Instagram buzz?
Yeah, most authors are on some form of social media. I don't really post on TikTok. I think a
Do you
big
get other people to post?
a lot of authors do have like personal assistants or social media people who manage their social media. Most books, though, that have had success through social media, it's not because of the author. It's usually organic through readers, and so it's bookstagrammers or it's book influencers or people who genuinely just read the book and were excited and posted about it. It's always, it's typically the organic, component that is what makes a book take off. And a lot of people, posting and being interested with it. So authors do their part and I think are, in some capacity expected to do their part if being available kind of and posting on social media. But the magic of a book taking off on social media usually is not because of the author. It's because of other people posting, because it's more authentic that way, right? When it's readers who are genuinely excited about a book that they've read and they go and make a video about it.
What Mormon community do you live in?
I'm in Arizona. I'm in Mesa.
Okay.
You know the area?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in my own Mormon real lives and Mormon
Secret
lives.
Yeah.
Nicole.
You don't have to answer this. I really liked the ending of the book, and not to spoil it, but is there going to be a sort of sequel-ish thing?
It is a bit of an open ending. So there is like opportunity for that. I will say, if I were to, I think, like I've thought about it, like what would it look like? I think it would be cool to write Tenley's point of view. So Tenley is one of the other cast members she's the first person who takes the stand during the trial. And so I think it would be fun to do a sequel that's in her point of view. But no plans as of yet. Yes.
You said HR is your day job. So I'm so fascinated with, people who write books. So what got you into writing? Did you just sit down and do it? Or is this something that, you've been taking classes and, have writing groups, or how did it work?
I don't have an MFA or any credentials in terms of writing. I don't know. Mine has all been through like reading craft books and through experience of writing. I always wanted to write a book, and I think like most authors, 10,000 words here, 20,000 words here. I'd started and stopped over the years, and had several ideas and have like the folder with all the ideas that are written and whatnot. And I never had finished anything. And then when COVID hit, I finished something for the first time. And I think the first time that you actually finish something, so you've written a full book from start to finish, it sort of unlocks something a little bit and makes you feel more capable of being able to do that again. And I think it really becomes easier once you've done that for the first time. I think that's probably the hardest part of the writing journey, is getting to the point where you can write a book from start to finish.
And did you do this independently, or did you have like a writing community you were part of?
Both. So I think part of the initial struggle, if you will, is finding your community. And, sometimes you meet people who aren't a good fit and you sort of have to fumble your way through. It's the same with like beta readers, for example, like people that might send your book too early to read for you and give you feedback. You might run into a few that aren't a good fit, and so it's sort of fumbling your way through to find who the right community is. I have that now, but I would say it took me up until this point to really find the right people, and to have the right set of community. But yeah, it is important to have, because you do need other people to put eyes on your book and read it. And oftentimes you need that before you're at the point where you get an agent.
Yeah. Do you still send your work to beta readers?
I do. Yeah, I do. I didn't with the dystopian because I didn't have time. Well, Alicia read a few pages.
Beta reader, I don't.
So someone who would read, once you've finished a kind of rough first draft, someone who will read it for you and give you early developmental
And
notes.
it's like they're like people you hire?
No, it's
Usually
usually
like a friend.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
other authors or people who read heavily in the genre. People who are used to doing editorial type of work. So maybe they work as a copy editor or, that's why I say you have to kind of kiss a lot of frogs to get to the point of people that you can work well with in that space because it has to be advice that is really beneficial to you, not just advice. I think everyone's had bad beta readers at some point as an author.
Yes.
Yeah,
That's normal, I think.
for sure.
Do we have any final questions? Those were all amazing questions. So
Good questions.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you.